Okay, hello, how are you?
Hi. Good, how are you?
Good. Okay, for the last couple of days, leading close to a week, we have been learning about what? Sink or float. We've been learning about if an object is heavy, a lot of the times it does what? Sinks. And if it's light, you'll see it do what? Float. So we talked about that. We talked about different objects that could possibly sink or float. For example, about a feather. What is a feather normally you would think would do? Float. And what about, let me think what we tested. What about like a little toy car? It sunk to the floor, to the bottom of the tub. Today, we're going to actually test some items that I pulled aside for this activity, okay? Our standard that we're going to address today is we're going to sort objects by observable properties such as size, shape, color, temperature, hot or cold, weight, heavy or light, texture, and whether the objects sink or float. So whether the object sinks or float, that's really where our target is in this standard. Okay? And our objective for this object is given a list of items that you'll see in a moment. You will make a prediction on which items will sink or float with completing 12 out of 15 points on the handout, the worksheet. Okay? There'll be 10 items and 3 questions. The questions at the end are going to be worth 2 points each, and it's where you fill in. Okay? Our learning goals is to really talk about what an observation is, what a prediction is, talk about how we're going to go back and revise, and to view whether items sink or float. Does anybody have any questions so far? No? Okay, can somebody tell me what, like rephrase what we're going to be doing? David.
We're going to be learning about what items sink or float.
Okay, Zachary, you have something to add to it?
We're going to test items to see if they sink or float.
Okay, anybody else? That pretty much covered it? Right. We're going to test items to see if they sink or float. Now let me ask you a question. Okay, have you ever tested items to sink or float at home? Steven?
I tried goggles and whatever I tried them, they sunk to the bottom.
Like where did you try goggles at?
In my pool.
In your pool. But are they really heavy? Not really, right, David? Did you try something different?
Yeah.
What did you try? Like a toy? Where?
In my pool.
In your pool? And did it sink or float?
It kind of went underwater and floated.
So it didn't go all the way to the bottom, it kind of went in the middle. Okay? So those are some really things to think about. And after this lesson, I want you to go home and kind of create your own list of items with permission. Come up with a list of 5 to 7 items and actually test those. Different than the ones we're going to test today. Okay? Does that sound like a plan? And then you're going to bring them back and you're going to share with the class what we're going to do. Okay? For our worksheets, I'm going to pass out these worksheets. There are 2 pieces of paper per student. Go ahead and write your name on the top of each paper with the pencil. Give me a thumbs up when you're ready. Thank you. Awesome. Wonderful. Okay, so the title of this worksheet that we're actually going to do is called Sink or Float. The first question at the top, it says, what is a prediction? What is a prediction? So go ahead, I want you to take a second and think about what a prediction is. Have you heard that word before, prediction? You have? Okay, wonderful. Can somebody kind of summarize what they think a prediction is? Steven?
I think prediction is like what will happen.
Okay.
I think a prediction is when you think it's like you're gonna guess what is gonna happen.
So kind of same thing, a guess. So go ahead on those lines underneath it, go ahead and write what you think a prediction is. When you're done, put your pencils down so I know everyone is complete before we move on. Everyone done?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Does somebody want to read the response to me? Zachary?
A prediction is a guess on what will happen.
A prediction is a guess on what will happen. Does everyone kind of have the same answer? Maybe worded just a little bit different? Yeah. Guess pretty much what it is. There's not many different ways to guess a prediction. A prediction is something that you are going to guess what's going to happen. For example, in Sink or Float, we're going to do a lot of predictions. We're going to predict if we think the item is going to sink or if we think the item is going to float. So we're going to do lots of predictions on that. Does anybody have any questions on what we're going to do so far? Steven?
So we're gonna test items and see if they will sink or float.
After we make the predictions, correct. Is that what you were going to ask if we're going to test items? Yes, that's what this bucket's good for. We're going to actually test our items to see if they sink or float. Now I put together a PowerPoint here, and you can see the title of the PowerPoint is Sink or Float. The next slide, I'm going to show you 5 different items we're going to show first. We're going to test first. And you're going to make predictions on what is going to sink or float. In order to do that, if you look at both your papers side by side. So put them side by side for me. And you can see on the first paper, there's a picture of a boat. And what do you think that page is going to represent, David? Sink. And the second page is a picture of a duck floating on water. Stephen, what does that represent? Float. You see there's lines on each page, okay? You're going to go write down which items you think are going to sink and which items you think are going to float, and that's it. You're not going to worry about those happy faces and sad faces or the questions at the bottom just yet. We'll get to that. We're focusing on just writing down our predictions, okay? So let's go ahead and look at our first slide here. And it says, will I sink or will I float? Here's your first 5 items you're going to guess. You have a piece of mulch, pipe, pencil, a toy frog, and a rock. Go ahead and make your predictions on which items you think will sink and which items you think will float. When you're done, put your pencils down and we'll wait for everyone to get done. Ooh, Zachary, you went quick. You have a strong idea. Awesome. Great job. Just a couple more seconds. Has anybody actually tried any of these items at home? Stephen, you've actually tried some of these? Which ones?
A rock.
A rock? That's kind of pretty obvious. We kind of think it's going to float, right? No, what's it going to do? Sink. Is that the object you were going to say too, David, was the rock? Okay, those are 5. We have space for how many items? David? 10 items. So let's go ahead and look at our next slide. Again, it says, will I sink or will I float? But there's 5 different objects. On this one, you have a pair of goggles, a ball that's got holes in it, a screw, a necklace, and a pumpkin. Now this pumpkin is a real small pumpkin. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it around so you can kind of get a feel of it. So, take your guess on what you think will sink or float. So go ahead and feel it a little bit, feel the weight of it. That might help determine. And then pass it to the next person. So it's kind of a little, it's not a full-size pumpkin, but it still is a little bit on the heavier side, right? Again, when you're done, go ahead and put your pencil down and give me a thumbs up. Now, on these papers, there's 5 lines for each one. But if you think there's more items that's going to sink than float, then go ahead and just make your lines at the bottom. Okay? You're done, Stephen? Awesome. And make sure to go back and count your items to make sure you have 10 items on your paper. If you don't have 10, you've missed an item, or if you have more than 10, you've doubled up on an item. So you have to pick sink or float for that item. You can't pick both. Of course, if we pick both, both, that's a surefire way to get it right, right? Yeah? Anybody think of that one? Yeah. Just go ahead and stick both of them and get both right. But that one really wouldn't be a prediction, right? Prediction's one or the other. Okay, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Awesome. Did everybody predict these items? Thumbs up. Great. So now we're going to stop the lesson, right? Why? What do you want to do?
No, we don't want to test.
You want to test the objects. That would be the fun part of it, right? Here's our big bucket of water. Can everybody see top and bottom of the container so we can see? Okay, we're going to start with a pencil. Okay, go ahead and turn your papers over. Because we're still going to predict. So without looking at our paper, thumbs up if you think it's going to sink. Thumbs down if you think it's going to float. It's a pretty no-brainer, I think. What did it do? Steven? It floated at the top, right? Okay, let's go ahead and work on our necklace. Thumbs up if you think it's going to sink to the bottom. Think it's going to sink? And it's just a plastic beaded plain necklace. What did it do? David? Floated at the top, right? The next item, we might as well go ahead and do goggles because I think everybody has an idea what's going to happen. Zachary, what is going to happen? It's probably going to sink. Only because you guys are too smart and you've already tried this at home, right? What did it do? Zachary? It sunk to the bottom. You can see it's, if you look underneath, it's actually touching the bottom of the water. Can you see that? Great. How are we doing so far? Do we think we're doing pretty good on our predictions? Yeah? Okay, next we're going to try this ball. Now, I have tested many balls in the water before, actually, trying to figure out which items I wanted to use. But what's so special about this ball? Steven?
It has holes.
It has holes in it. Do we think it's going to affect the item? David?
Sometimes it could and sometimes it couldn't because sometimes it could because water could like go into the holes and absorb the water.
And absorb the water. Do you think this item's going to sink because of all the holes? You still think it's going to float? Who thinks it's going to sink? You think it's going to sink to the bottom? Why?
Because it has holes.
Because of the holes? Let's find out. What did it do? David?
It kind of like went under but stayed up.
It does, right? It doesn't, we're going to call it as a float because it doesn't touch the bottom, but at the same time, it's not really on top of it either, right? So, I mean, it's in the middle. And I think the reason for that is because of the holes in the ball. I think that really does affect it. Okay, let's try a piece of mulch. Thumbs up if you think it's going to float. Everyone thinks it's going to float? I agree. It's exactly what it did. It's a very light piece of mulch. It's real mulch, but it's very light. Okay, our next item we're going to try, we might as well go ahead and do this item, the rock. Everyone thinks it's going to float, right? It's so light. What's it going to do? David, sink to the bottom. It's exactly what it did. Because it's very heavy. That's an item that depends on its weight is going to sink because it's very heavy. However, do all items that are heavy sink? David? No? Can someone give me an example of an item that's really heavy that floats on kind of on top of the water, doesn't go to the bottom? Steven?
A boat.
A boat. A boat is very heavy. I don't think any of us, even working together, could pick up a big boat, a real boat, but yet it doesn't sink to the bottom, does it? Anybody have any idea why? Steven?
Because it has like a curved surface.
Okay, so the shape of the boat could take into effect. Anybody else want to add to it? David?
It has like less density.
So the density of it could take an effect to it. That's correct. We're going to learn about density later on this year, and then maybe we can come back and make our own boats and see if the shape of a boat is going to affect it. Next, we have this little toy frog. You see, it's one that I believe someone got from Chuck E. Cheese. tokens, it's very light. It's not heavy, but who thinks it's gonna sink? You think it's gonna float, Zachary? Why?
Because it's small and light.
Because it's small and light. So you would think this is gonna sink because it's light, and this is just like this is, sorry, you said this is gonna float because it's light, and this sunk because it was heavy, let's see. What did it do, Zachary?
It's not.
It sunk to the bottom. That's something to really think about because it is very light, very light. It does not weigh much at all, but yet it sunk to the bottom. It's an interesting observation. Next, we're going to try the screw. It's not very heavy. Who thinks, thumbs up if you think it's going to sink to the bottom? Zachary thinks it's going to sink to the bottom. You think it's going to float, Steven? Why?
Because it looks light.
Because it looks light. Let's try it out. What do you do? Sunk to the bottom. Kind of interesting, right? We have two more items we're going to test here out of our list. Next one is the pipe, the piece of pipe, and it's got, as you can see, it's got 2 ends to it through open. What's it going to do? David,
I think it's yours.
why?
Because like just like the ball, it has holes and it kind of absorbs the water. So maybe that because they're like bigger and it will hold it better, not like spread out all the water.
Awesome. Anybody else have something different to say? Zachary? Because it's heavy. Did they kind of answer your question? Right. So we think the water's going to enter the holes in this piece of pipe and bring it way down. Let's see. It's exactly what it did. And you can kind of hear it, right? I'm going to do it one more time. Kind of hear it filling with water, bringing it down. Listen. Right? Kind of cool, right? So you actually saw it.
And you can see like the bubbles that it's making.
Very good observation. You saw the bubbles making it as it was going down. Our final object we're going to test is this pumpkin. Who thinks this pumpkin is going to sink to the bottom? Everyone thinks it's going to sink. Why? Zachary.
Because it's heavy.
Because it's heavy. David?
Because it's filled with a lot of stuff.
Because it's got probably stuff in it. The kind of guess what you were going to guess? Let's see. Did it sink to the bottom? David? No, but is it floating at the top of the water? No. What is it doing, Stephen?
It's kind of in the middle.
Kind of in the middle, kind of like what other object we tested. What other object was it?
The ball.
The ball. I'm going to put it back in here too. Kind of fills some. We're going to count it as floating because it does not touch the bottom. In order for us to count it as an item that is sunk, it has to touch the bottom. But these items are kind of in the middle, right? Kind of interesting. Maybe we should try, maybe next week I'll bring in a bigger pumpkin and see if it's the same thing, if it floats or sinks. Maybe because it's bigger and it's heavier, we might get it to sink. What do you think? Something to think about? Great job. Now, you can turn your papers back over. And we made predictions on our papers. Now we're going to revise our answers. What do you think that means? What does revise mean, Zachary?
Go over.
We go over it, David.
Recheck.
Check it. We're going to check to see if we've got them right or wrong. What we're going to do now is I'm going to put up the list of items again in 2 columns. One is sink, one is float, the items that we tested. And what you're going to do is you're going to circle the happy face next to the item if you got it correct, and the sad face next to the item if you predicted wrong. Okay? It doesn't really mean you got the whole problem wrong because it was just a prediction. But you're going to go ahead and revise your papers. So here's the list of items. The items that sunk to the bottom were the goggles, the screw, the frog, the pipe, and the rock. So go ahead and revise and check your work. So remember, you're going to either circle the happy face or the sad face, depending on if you guessed it correctly or incorrectly. The items that floated, yes, Steven?
I got all of them right.
You got all of them right. Oh, wow, great job. The items that floated was the mulch, the ball, the pencil, the necklace, and the pumpkin. David?
I got one wrong on this one.
Which one?
Pumpkin.
On the sink or float?
The sink.
The sink, okay.
The sink. It really went over here, but I didn't get pins on it.
Well, what is this screw? You have a screw over here. Did you get that right or wrong? You used to have a circle. Did you add it at the bottom? So you got it right. Great job, Zachary. How did you do?
I got 3 incorrect.
You predicted 3 wrong? Does that mean you have the whole problem wrong? No. Again, with predictions, it's just a guess. It's just a guess, so you could get it. You could predict wrong, that's okay. But that's why we tested our items, to go back and see if we predicted correctly. Underneath, on the paper with the duck, go ahead and put that paper on top. You have 2 questions under there, okay? Your first question says, I thought the blank was going to sink because. What you're gonna do is you're gonna go ahead and fill in which item you thought was going to sink and why. It can be any of the items, whether it's sunk or floated, but you're gonna fill that item in. I thought the blank was going to sink because, and fill in your answer for me. Steven?
Can we do the bottom one yet?
No, we're gonna focus on just the top question. That way we all stay together for this. But thank you for asking before moving ahead. Thank you for signaling your thumbs up to let me know you are complete. Great job, everyone's finished it. Now the second question we're going to answer says, I thought the blank was going to float because. So go ahead and write which item you thought was going to float and then fill in your answer. David.
What would I do for the float when I got them all right?
So you got them all right.
Right. But the pumpkin I got wrong on this time.
On that one, so you thought the pumpkin was going to sink, so we can't really put that one on that. So what you could do, that's a great question. So you thought, but you could go ahead and answer. You could say, I thought the mulch was going to float because, and write why you thought it was going to float, or the pencil, the necklace, or the ball. You can go ahead, even though you got it right, you can go ahead and fill that in there. Couple more seconds. Let's let everybody have time to finish. Everyone done? Awesome. Does anybody want to share their response with us? Zachary, you want to share your first one with us? The item you thought was going to sink and why?
I thought the pumpkin was going to sink because it was heavy like a real pumpkin.
Like a real pumpkin. Did anybody put something different? Steven?
I thought the rock was going to sink because it looks heavy.
Because it looks heavy. Awesome. Now the second question, which item did you think was going to float and why, David?
I thought the mulch was going to float because it was very light and didn't weigh a lot.
Didn't weigh a lot. Does somebody have a different answer? Steven?
I thought the ball was going to float because it's light.
Because it's light. Zachary, what did you put on yours?
I thought the frog was going to float because it was light and small.
Because it was light and small, but actually in reality it sunk to the bottom, right? Awesome job. Did everyone enjoy this activity?
Yes.
Yes? Thumbs up. Great job. I'm glad that's the whole thing about predictions, and you'll learn that as we continue on, as you continue on through school, is you make predictions on things you're going to do, but the important thing is to remember is to test your predictions to see if they're right or wrong. Everybody can guess all day long, but you don't know if they're right unless you actually test your items, okay? So we're going to review. Can someone sum up what we did today? Zachary.
Today we tested objects to see if they sink or float.
Okay, David, do you have something to add to that?
Today we made a prediction about what we thought was going to float and what we thought was going to sink.
Great job. Steven, do you have anything else to add? No, what did we do at the end after we tested the items though? Steven?
We revised.
We revised our work. We went back and checked it and made corrections. And the way we make corrections is we know if we got it wrong, we did that sad face, or right, we did the happy face, and that way we know it's the opposite, okay? So our standard that we touched base on today was we sorted objects by observable properties. Okay, there's lots of observable properties, such as size, shape, color, temperature, hot or cold, weight, if it's heavy or light, the texture of an item, and whether the objects sink or float. And again, that's the part of the standard, that we really touched base on, was whether an object sinked or floated. Our objective was given a list of items. On this PowerPoint, we had 10 items. The students will make predictions on which items will sink or float with completing 12 out of 15 points on the handout or the worksheet. That is what you did as well. You all did a great job. I am very pleased with your classroom behavior. You worked at a level 1 or 2 voice, meaning you whispered, you worked quietly when you did your work, and you participated, which I love that you participated in the questions. And we learned about sink or float. We learned about revising, making predictions. So what I'm gonna have you do now is I want you to go home, like I said earlier. You're gonna go home and you're gonna create your own list of items, okay? You can come up with 5 items, 7 items, 10 items, but I want them to be different. I don't want you to use the same items we used. Also make sure that your parents are okay with you testing these items. For example, I don't know, David?
Can we use like an item not from here, but like we tested maybe another time?
Of course. Make sure you can test the item. Don't, of course, don't say, oh, I think my computer's gonna sink. Because if you put that in the water, I don't think your parents are gonna be very happy. So make sure these items you can actually test, okay? Also, if somebody, I've thought about this, and I meant to mention this before, is Legos. Does everyone have Legos at home? Okay? One Lego, I know, floats at the top. But I wonder how many Legos it takes to sink to the bottom. So you have 2 assignments. What's the first assignment? David?
To like see which one, like see like 5 or 6 or 10 items, which one sink or float, and I want to like write them and bring them just facts.
Okay, are the items going to be the same as the items we talked about today? No, make sure they're different. What's the second item? Second assignment we're going to do at home. Zachary?
See how many Legos it takes to make it sink.
See how many Legos it takes to make it sink. Okay, so that's what your homework and your additional practice is going to be, is finding these items, creating your own list, and testing the items. You can do it in the sink, in the bathtub, whatever, in a tub of water like this one, and also checking to see how many Legos, when connected together, make sure you connect them, are going to sink to the bottom. Does anybody have any questions on what we did today? No questions? All right, great job.